Where were you at the times of the attacks of 9/11?
I was living in Dallas and working for Zale Corporation, the jeweler, and I was getting ready for work and watching one of the morning news shows like the Today Show when the coverage switched over to the plane crashes, and I watched essentially the whole coverage, or as much as I could have, on TV before going to work that morning.
How did the attacks affect work that day?
For me, it had a very big impact on work because my job at that time was investor relations. So my job was communicating and dealing with investors in Zale Corporation, which was a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. So because the attacks were so significant, the stock market shut down that day. So all of the investors that I normally talk to, their days were sort of on hold with everything that was going on. In fact, the stock market was closed for the longest that I can remember. It didn't open for nearly a week after the attacks of 9/11.
What were the ways that it affected you outside of work?
Outside of work, it impacted how I traveled. I was much more cautious about getting on an airplane after those attacks because the people responsible for the attacks were from the Middle East. I was also concerned about your mom's parents, your grandma and grandpa, because they were living in Saudi Arabia at the time. So I was concerned about their safety and what the attacks would mean for expatriates like them that were living in other countries, especially those in the Middle East.
Did you know anybody that was directly affected from the attacks?
I didn't know anyone who was in the Twin Towers, but most of the people that I talked with on my, through my work, my day-to-day job, were large investors, institutional investors, who mostly resided in New York. So nearly everyone I spoke to after 9/11 had a family member, friend, a neighbor, someone who was directly involved in the attacks, either in the building or working near the Twin Towers, but somehow they were affected by the incident.
Has anything changed in your life since the attacks that have made you learn anything about the incident?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly I've done a lot of reflecting on it. I've seen a lot of, documentaries. It has, certainly impacted my my position as an American, and I'm prouder as an American after being part of a country that went through such an ordeal. But I think it maybe has just taught me that you cannot take anything for granted. That in one moment, your life or those around you can be taken from you for a reason that is out of your control. And unfortunately, we've seen more and more of these kind of incidents, I feel like, since 9/11, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, with the increased number of shootings in public settings. That has become very, very common, unfortunately. And so I think in general, these sort of catastrophes, violent acts, has caused me to be a little bit more apprehensive about being in public settings.